Bran Stark did not win the Game of Thrones. He ended it, and no one in that room realised the game was already over before it started. Here is the thing about that council meeting in the Dragon Pit. Every lord in that circle thought they were making a decision. Sansa thought she was negotiating. Tyrion thought he was giving the speech of his life. Even Jon, exiled and broken, thought he was paying a price. None of them understood what they were actually part of. Bran said 9 words when they asked him to be king. 9 words that, if you actually listen to them, are the most terrifying line in the entire show. Why do you think I came all this way? That is not a man accepting a burden. That is a man confirming an arrival he scheduled a long time ago. This whole story looks completely different, because the version of Bran that sat in that dragon pit is not the same creature that left it. Bran Stark is not just a boy with visions. Raven existed for one purpose, to pass its role to a successor, and it chose Bran. The three-eyed raven is a position, not a person. The books make this clear. Only one person in 1,000 is born with the ability to warg, to enter the minds of animals and control them. Only one warg in 1,000 can be a greenseer. That makes Bran a roughly 1 in a million occurrence. He's not unusual, he is singular. What that means practically is this: Bran has access to the Weirwood tree network, those ancient white-barked, carved-faced trees scattered across Westeros. Those trees have been watching the world for thousands of years. Through them, Bran can see past events, present events happening anywhere in the world at once, and fragments of future possibilities. He can also warg, enter the minds of animals and people. He did it with his direwolf Summer. He did it repeatedly with Hodor. The show never took that ability away from him. The Hodor scene is where the true weight of Bran's powers becomes clear, and most people missed what it was actually saying. In Season 6, while experiencing a vision of young Hodor, then called Willis, in Winterfell's past, Bran gets stuck. Mira is screaming at Hodor to hold the door. Bran, still locked in the vision, wargs into present-day Hodor while his consciousness simultaneously bleeds backward into young Willis in the past. The two moments collapse into each other. Young Willis seizes, his mind shatters, and for the rest of his life the only words he can produce are a corruption of what Mira is screaming at a point in time that has not happened yet for Willis. Hold the door, Hodor. This is called a predestination paradox. The event could only ever have happened the way it did. Bran's interference in the past was not an accident that changed history. It was always part of history. He's not just watching the timeline, he's woven into it. The three-eyed raven confirmed this when he told Bran, "The past is already written. The ink is dry." Bran cannot rewrite what happened. He can only be the part of it that was always there. Now carry that logic forward to the finale. When Bran returns to Winterfell after his time beyond the wall, he waits. Just sits near the Weirwood tree and waits. When Sam tells him Jon's true parentage, that Jon is actually Aegon Targaryen, the legitimate heir to the Iron Throne, Bran is not surprised. He already knew. He had seen it. And rather than tell Jon himself, he let Sam do it. The timing of that decision changed everything. Jon knowing too early might have caused him to act differently, might have given Daenerys enough time to lock in his loyalty or remove him as a threat. Instead, Sam told Jon, Jon told Daenerys, and Daenerys, already fraying after heavy losses, reacted with fear and paranoia. The trust between them broke. That break led to King's Landing burning and Daenerys dying. The show does not tell you Bran planned this, but the evidence on screen is consistent. Bran held a piece of information that could reshape everything, chose exactly when to release it, and the chain of consequences ended with him on the throne. That is not coincidence. That is timing. Now look at the council scene itself. Not just who shows up, but what Bran actually does there. Tyrion had been imprisoned by Daenerys for betraying her. He was in chains when this meeting happened. The only reason he got to speak at all was because the Unsullied allowed it, and the only reason they allowed it was because Sansa demanded it. Sansa, who travelled south specifically for this meeting, and with Bran they created the conditions for Tyrion to give that speech. Tyrion gave the speech, Tyrion nominated Bran, and Bran, who had said almost nothing the entire time, responded with a line that tells you everything if you're listening. Then come the appointments. And this is where the picture becomes undeniable. Bronn, a former sellsword who arrived in the north carrying Joffrey's crossbow, with orders from Cersei to kill both Tyrion and Jaime, and only stood down when Tyrion outbid her with a promise of Highgarden, is now Master of Coin. The man controls the kingdom's treasury. He has no financial background. He was not even a lord before this. He keeps Highgarden only as long as he stays useful to the arrangement. Brienne of Tarth becomes Lord Commander of the King's Guard. Brienne is one of the most honourable people in the story, which is exactly why this appointment works so well for Bran. She is constitutionally incapable of betraying someone she has sworn herself to. She will not question him, challenge him, or organize against him. She is the ideal head of security for a king who never wants his protective circle to develop independent ideas. Samwell Tarly becomes Grand Maester without ever having forged his chain. He left the Citadel before completing his training, taking restricted books on his way out. He's wildly unqualified by any institutional standard in that world, but he has no political ambition. He is devoted to his friends, and most importantly, he is now writing the official history of these events. Sam gets to frame the story, and his history is titled A Song of Ice and Fire. Tyrion, who had just failed as Hand of the Queen and was hours away from execution, becomes Hand of the King again. Davos, a former smuggler, becomes Master of Ships. Not one of these people is in a position to challenge Bran. Every single one of them owes the arrangement something they cannot afford to lose. That is not a council of advisors, that is a council of dependents. Then Bran mentions, almost in passing, that 3 council positions are still open: Master of Whisperers, Master of Laws, and Master of War. He says it like a minor detail, but those 3 positions control the kingdom's intelligence network, its legal framework, and its military command. He left the spy apparatus, the law, and the army deliberately unfilled on day 1. He did not prioritize rebuilding the city or feeding the survivors. He prioritized noting which arms of power he had not yet placed his own people in, and then, before leaving the meeting, he brings up Drogon, the last living dragon. After Daenerys died, Drogon picked up her body and flew east, destination unknown. Bran says, "Perhaps I can find him," and rolls out of the room. The council goes back to arguing about money. Nobody asks what Bran intends to do when he finds it. Drogon is not an academic curiosity. It is a weapon that leveled a city, melted a throne, and has no owner. A king who immediately wants to locate it is not being philosophical. That is threat assessment on the first day of the job. One more structural move deserves attention, because it was framed as democracy and was anything but. Westeros had operated under hereditary monarchy for centuries. With Daenerys dead and the throne gone, the expected successor was Jon Snow, the legitimate Targaryen heir. Instead, Tyrion proposes something new, an elective monarchy. Future kings chosen by the lords of the realm, not inherited through bloodlines. This sounds like progress, but look at who it benefits. Bran explicitly cannot have children. He said this himself when Tyrion raised the idea. Under hereditary rule, that disqualifies him entirely. Under the new system, it is irrelevant. The political structure was redesigned around the single quality, or limitation, that would have made Bran ineligible under the old rules. And the man who proposed the redesign is now his hand. Here is what makes the new system genuinely dangerous in Bran's hands. Every future election will take place while Bran sits the throne. Every private conversation between lords building a coalition, every secret deal to support a rival candidate, every backroom agreement. Bran can potentially see all of it through the Weirwood network and hear it through any bird he walks into. How do you campaign against a sitting king who knows what you said to your closest advisor behind a closed door? You do not. The system looks open. It is not. The counter-argument to all of this is that a genuine mastermind would have done more. Bran let people die at Winterfell. He let Daenerys burn an entire city. He let Jon suffer through an impossible choice. If he saw it coming, why did he allow it? The answer comes from understanding what the three-eyed raven actually is. The man who held the role before Bran was Brynden Rivers, known as Bloodraven, a figure confirmed in House of the Dragon's Season 2 finale as the creature in that cave. In his human life, Bloodraven was a spy master and a ruthless political operator. He was exiled to the Wall and eventually merged with the Weirwood network, spending centuries watching the world. His philosophy was never to intervene in every bad event. It was to hold the long view, to allow history to move toward an outcome that preserves the structure underneath everything else. If the past is already written, then the fire that burned King's Landing was always going to burn. Bran may not have stopped it, because stopping it was never an option. The timeline does not have a version where Bran prevents those deaths and still ends up where he ends up. His passivity is not negligence. It is the three-eyed raven understanding that you do not pull a thread when you do not know what it holds together. That is a terrifying thing to understand about the person sitting at the centre of a government. And look at where every Stark ends up geographically when the show closes. Bran in King's Landing, watching the south. Sansa in Winterfell, ruling an independent north that technically answers to no one but remains connected to Bran through blood. Jon beyond the Wall with the Free Folk. Arya sailing west of every known map, every major direction, south, north, beyond the Wall, and the unknown west, has a Stark presence. Whether this was deliberate coordination or just what happened, the result is the same. There is no corner of the known world where someone can organise against Bran's crown without moving through territory that a Stark either rules, watches, or walks. That is not a scattered family. That is coverage. The lords who gathered in the Dragon Pit that day thought they were choosing a king. They voted. They felt good about it. They had no idea that the boy in the wheelchair had been waiting for that room since long before any of them knew it was coming. Daenerys said she wanted to break the wheel, but the wheel did not break. It was quietly replaced by something that does not need to spin at all, because the person at the centre already knows which direction every spoke is pointing. Whether the writers fully intended this, or whether they stumbled into something bigger than they planned, the evidence is on screen. A king who showed up knowing he would leave as king. A council built from people who cannot afford to turn against him. A political system designed around his only limitation, and an immediate interest in locating the last weapon he does not yet control. The game did not end in that dragon pit. It ended years earlier, the moment something ancient decided which boy in Winterfell would fall from a window and survive. Drop a comment with your take. Was Bran the most calculated player in the whole show, or did the writers accidentally write a villain and call it a happy ending? Subscribe if you want more of this. There is far more hidden in this story than most people stopped long enough to see.